All right, let's dive in
Yeah.
into the world of super-ionic conductors, or SiCs.
Right.
They're really kind of amazing materials.
Yeah.
Um, they have the potential to really change batteries
Totally.
and fuel cells as we know them.
And they're fascinating.
Then we are talking about
Yeah.
materials that can conduct ions
Yeah.
way better than typical solid.
Like way better.
Like, it's not even close.
Orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
Higher conductivity.
So for everyone working in materials science,
Yeah.
designing these next-gen electrochemical devices.
For sure.
Or if you're a PhD student just diving deep into this field, understanding these materials is key.
It's essential.
So that's what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah.
We're not just going to be looking at how well they perform,
Right.
but we're going to be digging into the mechanisms
Yeah.
that make these ions move so fast.
Exactly. The how and the why.
Yeah, the fundamental principles. And we're going to be looking at a really cool study
Yeah, this one's a good one.
by He, Zhu, and Professor Yifei Mo.
Interesting stuff.
It really gives us some new perspectives on these materials.
It really changes how we think about ion movement.
Yeah, and, traditionally,
Yeah.
we've thought about ions moving in solids.
Yeah.
As these kind of like isolated hops.
Like little jumps.
Right? Like single ion hopping from one site to the next.
Yeah. One at a time.
But that doesn't seem to explain
It doesn't cut it.
the crazy conductivity we see in SiCs.
Not even close.
Like LGPS, LLZO, LATP.
Yeah, those are the stars of the show.
Those are the ones.
Yeah.
So what's the big idea from this research?
So the big shift here is the idea of concerted migration.
Concerted migration.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So instead of ions just hopping one by one,
Yeah.
it's more like a group effort.
A coordinated movement.
Exactly. Multiple ions moving together,
Okay.
simultaneously hopping into the next available sites.
And this is all happening super fast, right?
Super fast. We're talking picoseconds.
Mhm.
To really see this in action, they used AMD simulations.
AMD, so that's...
Ab initio molecular dynamics.
Okay.
It's basically like watching atoms move in real time on a computer.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty powerful stuff.
So what SiCs did they look at with these simulations?
So they focused on three: LGPS, cubic phase LLZO, and LATP.
Okay, and those were all lithium-ion conductors.
Yep, all lithium-ion conductors, but they have different structures.
Some structures.
Yeah, like the way their anions are arranged is different.
Okay, so why was it important to look at materials with different structures?
Because they wanted to see if this concerted migration thing was universal.
Okay, so it wasn't just a fluke of one particular structure.
Right, exactly.
So what did the simulation show? Did they find evidence for this concerted movement?
Oh yeah, strong evidence.
Okay, tell me about it.
First, they saw a strong time correlation in the lithium-ion hopping.
Okay, so that means
When one lithium-ion hopped, its neighbors were very likely to hop around the same time.
like a chain reaction.
Kind of, yeah, but more like a coordinated dance.
Okay, I like that.
They also looked at these things called Van Hove correlation functions.
Van Hove. Okay, what are those?
They basically show you how the movement of one ion influences its neighbors over time.
Okay, so like a measure of the correlation.
Yeah, exactly. And those functions clearly showed these correlated movements.
So there's visual evidence too.
Absolutely. You can see it in figure 2 of the paper.
Nice.
And to quantify this, they calculated something called correlation factors.
Correlation factors, okay.
Yeah, which are related to something called the Haven ratio.
Okay.
And these factors tell you how many ions are hopping together on average.
And what did they find for these materials?
They found a correlation factor of 3 for both LGPS and LLZO,
3. Okay.
and 2.1 for LATP.
So what does that tell us?
It means that roughly 2 to 3 ions are involved in a coordinated jump in these SiCs.
Wow, so it's not just one ion at a time.
Nope, it's definitely a team effort.
So this concerted migration, which we usually think of in liquids,
Right, like in a solution.
is actually the main way ions are moving in these solid super-ionic conductors.
It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, that's huge.
So we've got this evidence for coordinated movement.
Yeah.
Let's look at some specific examples.
Yeah, let's see how this actually looks.
All right, so in LGPS, they saw a typical concerted migration with 4 lithium ions.
4, okay.
These ions simultaneously hop along a channel in the material structure.
And they're all moving into these neighboring sites.
Right, and this same 4-ion movement was also seen in a previous study,
Okay, so it's been seen before.
which gives it more credibility.
What about LLZO?
In LLZO, the lithium ions are distributed between tetrahedral and octahedral sites.
Tetrahedral and octahedral.
Okay, yeah, and the concerted migration they saw involves the lithium ions in tetrahedral sites hopping to nearby octahedral sites.
And at the same time,
The lithium ions in those octahedral sites hop to their neighboring tetrahedral sites.
So it's like a coordinated exchange?
Exactly, a real atomic dance.
And what about LATP?
For LATP, they saw a concerted migration with a pair of lithium ions.
Okay, just 2 this time.
Yeah, these 2 ions move as a unit.
Okay.
One hops to an unoccupied site.
And the other one?
Simultaneously hops to the next available site.
So it's not just one type of coordinated movement.
Right, different numbers of ions.
Different configurations.
All depending on the material.
But the principle of coordinated movement is the same.
Exactly.
And they saw a bunch of other concerted migration modes in their simulations too.
Yeah, they're detailed in the supplementary materials.
Okay.
And all these different modes had similar energy barriers.
Speaking of energy barriers, what were the calculated values for these concerted migrations?
They used a technique called nudged elastic band, or NEB.
NEB, okay.
Yeah, it's a way to calculate the energy path an ion takes during migration.
Okay.
And they found barriers of 0.20 electron volts for LGPS,
0.20 for LGPS,
0.26 for LLZO,
okay,
and 0.27 for LATP.
So all pretty low.
Yeah, and importantly, these calculated barriers match well with other data,
What kind of data?
both from their own AMD simulations and from experiments.
Okay, so it's consistent.
Exactly, it all fits together.
Now, if these concerted migrations have such low barriers,
Yeah.
wouldn't you expect the overall energy landscape for ion movement to be pretty flat?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But that's where things get interlining.
What do you mean?
They also calculated the energy landscapes for single lithium-ion migration,
Okay.
and they found much higher barriers.
Higher? Like how much higher?
0.47 electron volts for LGPS.
Wow, that's more than double.
Yeah, 0.58 for LLZO,
Okay.
and 0.49 for LATP.
So those are way higher than the barriers for concerted migration.
Right, which means the traditional model of single ion hopping
Yeah.
can't explain the fast diffusion we see in these materials.
Because it would predict much slower movement.
Exactly.
So something else is going on.
Right, and the authors argue that the key is in how the ions are arranged.
And how they interact with each other.
Exactly.
So it's not just about the individual ions.
It's about the whole system, the configuration and the interactions.
So what's so special about the ion arrangement in these SiCs?
Well, the mobile ions often occupy high energy sites.
High energy, wouldn't they want to be in low energy sites?
You'd think so, but at the high concentrations needed for super-ionic conductivity,
Yeah.
the low energy sites are already full.
So they're forced into these higher energy spots.
Right, but here's the thing. The interactions between the ions actually help to stabilize them in those high energy sites.
So it's not as unfavorable as it might seem at first.
Exactly.
And how do these interactions then lead to low barrier concerted migration?
They developed a model to explain this.
Okay.
It incorporates both an energy barrier and these Coulomb interactions.
Electrostatic interactions.
Right, and this model shows that when multiple ions move together under these strong Coulomb interactions, the effective energy barrier is significantly lower.
Like how much lower?
It drops to a range of 0.2 to 0.4 electron volts.
Wow, so it's much easier for them to move together.
Exactly, it's a cooperative effect.
And the paper also talks about the energy landscape at these high energy sites.
Yeah, that's important too.
What's so special about it?
It needs to be relatively flat.
Flat.
Yeah, so that ions can easily escape and participate in concerted migration.
So it's like a launching pad.
Exactly.
If the energy well was too deep,
Yeah.
it would be harder for the ions to get out.
And the simulations actually showed evidence for this flat energy landscape.
They did.
Yeah, at the high energy sites.
So it all ties together.
It does.
And this mechanism of concerted migration isn't limited to just these 3 materials, right?
No, the authors suggest it's a more general principle.
Okay.
They point to other SX where similar behavior has been seen.
Love food.
Li7P3S-Lamen, beta Li3PS4,
Okay, I've heard of those.
Lisicon, LTO perovskite,
Okay.
and even sodium-conducting nasicon.
So it's not just lithium ions.
No, they think this could apply to other ions too. They mention the silver super-ionic conductor AGI
Okay.
and some oxygen ionic conductors.
Interesting.
So this could be a really universal mechanism.
Wow, that's exciting.
And this understanding leads to a new strategy for designing SiCs.
Oh, tell me about that.
The idea is to introduce mobile ions into high-energy sites to activate concerted migration and lower those energy barriers.
So it's like a design principle.
Exactly.
And this explains why doping certain materials,
like lithium garnet and Nat Commun,
can enhance their conductivity.
Right, because you're adding ions to those high-energy sites.
And they actually tested this design idea in simulations, right?
Yeah, they designed 2 new potential SiCs.
What were they?
LiTaCio-5 and LiAlCio-4.
Okay.
And they doped these materials to introduce extra lithium ions.
Into those high-energy sites?
Exactly.
And what happened?
They saw significantly reduced migration barriers.
Okay. And what about conductivity?
They predicted conductivities comparable to known SiCs.
Wow, so it really works.
It's a proof of concept.
So to recap, fast ion diffusion in SiCs is mainly due to this concerted migration of multiple ions.
It's a team effort.
And this is facilitated by the way ions occupy high-energy sites.
And those strong Coulomb interactions.
Right, and the flat energy landscape at those sites.
All working together.
And this gives us a new way to design better SiCs.
A more rational approach.
This has been a great deep dive.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
It really makes you think about,
But it does.
If concerted migration is so important,
Yeah.
what new experimental techniques could we develop to actually see these multi-ion movements in real time?
That's a great question.
That's something to think about.
Yeah, definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
To this deep dive
Absolutely.
into the world of super-ionic conductors.
See you next time.
See ya.